The Cowboys have won 2 in a row. Can they make it 3 tomorrow night versus the Bengals? Let's talk about it. Yo, 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 what is up, everyone, and welcome into A to Z Sports Dallas Prime Time. I am your host, Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central here on Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network. And as always, catching up with you Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays with quick hitting videos. Tomorrow night won't be the case because we've got a game. That means we've got the game day show for week 14. And I'm excited, man. Cowboys versus Bengals. Here's the biggest thing about the Cowboys' current winning streak. I'm not buying into the hype, right? I'm not drinking any sort of hopium, as you guys call it. I'm not buying into any narratives about the Cowboys potentially making the playoffs. I'm not doing any of that. But I am enjoying the games, and I'm getting excited about the games, which is nice after an 0-5 run. Because when the Cowboys were losing and losing and losing earlier this season, we were not having fun. We were talking about the NFL draft, and that's fine. I understand why a lot of people will still talk about it, right? The Cowboys, there's a lot of people thinking about a draft pick. And, Mark Aaron says, I see a top 10 pick in our future. Not drinking Kool-Aid, as Mickey says, Mick says over here in the chat either. But I'm enjoying the games. I'm enjoying getting ready for the games. And, you get the Bengals up next, which are also a team that is struggling record-wise, but that still looks like a very scary opponent when you watch Joe Burrow play. Because let me tell you something. The Bengals, offensively, they're fine. They're ready to go. And they will challenge the Cowboys on Monday Night Football. There are some matchups to watch, and we're going to get into those tonight as we get ready for this game. And specifically, I'm going to get into some matchups that I believe could sway things the Cowboys' way, or that in any case will define whether or not the Cowboys win tomorrow night. And I'm going to start with none other than Micah Parsons, because if you are looking for a mismatch in favor of the Cowboys, you got to start with your superstar. That is number 11. Let me tell you something about the Bengals offensive line. It sucks. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's bad. They're 26th in pass rush win rate. They're 32nd in run block win rate. So they're not good in pass protection, and they're not good run blocking. But also, they happen to be down one of their best players, and that is left tackle Orlando Brown Jr. And the thing about Brown Jr. is that he was playing with an injured knee already, injured leg. He had a fibula injury versus who was the Steelers last week. And Nick Herbig was going to town against Orlando Brown Jr. So I guess the Bengals were like, nope, we're not fielding him if he's not healthy. And now the exciting thing about Parsons in this game is that I usually go into every game day kind of looking for where can Micah be used at his most dangerous, right? What is the weak link on the opponent offensive line, and where do you want to line up Micah in this game? Sometimes it's bad center, and you want to take advantage of that with the two-way pass rush thing that they do, where they will line up Micah in a 2-point stance, and then he can pick the shoulder of the center that he wants to attack. Or sometimes they'll find a way to isolate him on a guard, or sometimes they'll just pick on an offensive tackle. With the Bengals, I think it's kind of like a pick your poison kind of deal, where you can go up against backup left tackle Cody Ford on Monday night. You can play him against the rookie Amarius Mims. Now, Mims has had his moments. You guys know he was all about the upside. He's got the size. He's got the length. The question was, how quickly is he going to find his rhythm in the NFL? And I think if you look at Mims play football, he belongs. He's out there doing his thing. But if you line him up against Micah, I'm betting Micah is going to get the best of him. Because Micah is so much more than just a speedy pass rusher, right? He's shown us little by little how experienced and how tricky he can be at times with his movements, with his pass rush repertoire. And he can also pick on whoever the Cowboys want him to pick on interior-wise. whether you're talking about the center or you're talking about the guards. So I think it's going to be a huge game for Micah Parsons. But that doesn't stop there. Obviously, I'm talking about Micah as the biggest matchup. But I think Ozo Digisuwa can take advantage of whoever they place in front of him. I think, or wherever he lines up, excuse me. The same goes for Massey Smith. I think this can be a big game for Massey. And whoever plays on the other side of Micah Parsons, like I'm talking about Chauncey Golston and I'm talking about Carl Lawson, he should be in a good spot to rush the passer on this one. Now, you look at the Bengals, sometimes a lot of that doesn't matter because Joe Burrow is just so damn good moving around and doing his thing and finding, a way to escape the pressure and still find someone down the field. But what I'm excited about with this matchup is that you wouldn't notice with the way that the numbers have been for the Cowboys defense this year, Dallas actually has a sixth best third down defense. And that ties directly together to what we've talked about in recent shows where we've pointed out the Cowboys pass rush has been good the entire season. When they were losing early on, though, they couldn't prove it because the Cowboys were just being run against and the opponent didn't even have to drop back to throw the football. But the pass rush has always been good. So whenever they get the opponent to third and long, the Cowboys have proven that they can take on whoever. And I would argue that even the good teams like the Ravens were proof of this. There were some snaps in that Ravens game, for example, that you go back and you look at them and the pass rush is doing its thing. So I'm excited about that matchup on Monday Night Football. I think the Cowboys can get to Joe Burrow, but I also think, Joe Burrow is an MVP caliber quarterback, even in 2024. I know the Bengals are losing. I know voters are never going to give Joe Burrow a first place vote, but that is how well he's been playing this season. So it's going to be a fun matchup to watch. And I think ultimately the biggest problem with blitzing, with trying to get to Joe Burrow aggressively, is that it's going to be tough to play man-to-man coverage in the back end because Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, those are dudes that will punish you for that kind of stuff. And if Trevon Diggs plays, though, then you get Trevon Diggs and or Deron Bland against Jamar, and it's just going to be an exciting battle to watch on the field. I could totally see the Cowboys really finding a way to slow down the Bengals. I could totally see the Cowboys being the team that doesn't give up 30-plus points to the Bengals on Monday night. As well as Cincinnati has been playing, I think we shouldn't underestimate how good the pass rush has been, specifically since Micah's return. He's got 5.5 sacks, 27 pressures, or 23, pressures. That's in a 4-game span. So the Cowboys have been doing their thing. So I think that's number one. Holly says Micah is a game changer for us and a game wrecker for opponents. He really is that kind of a dude, I think. He really is. A lot of criticism goes to Micah because of his persona in general, what he says to the media, what he says on his podcast. But on the field, he just keeps proving people wrong. And I know we talk a lot about the pressures and the sacks and the hits, but even in the run game, like Micah is much better than given credit for versus the run. And when you consider Oza is playing great, and Micah is as well, and the defensive ends are finding their rhythm backup-wise, right? Like Carl Lawson and Chauncey Golston. And then Obershone is playing the way that he's playing. This Cowboys defense has improved against the run even. The problem will be, and I know what Mark Aaron is saying here, and I agree. The problem, he says, he doesn't say, but I'm saying this is the problem, right? Mark says, I think we have to score on defense or special teams to beat the Bengals. That is a problem. The Bengals are still going to put points on you. And the question becomes, and I put this on the thumbnail for YouTube, can Cooper Rush keep up with Joey B? And that is a big problem, right? Lil Dallas Cowboy said just earlier, he asked, what time is it? Does anyone know? Does anyone got the time? Rush hour, he says. And the question becomes, can they get Cooper Rush to cook? And that is a dangerous proposition. But I've got some reasons to believe maybe they can. Maybe they can. And here's the biggest thing that will matter on Monday Night Football, right? Jake Ferguson is coming back. So you're going to get Jake Ferguson. You're going to get CeeDee Lamb on the field. My question is, can you handle Trey Hendrickson. That's the Bengals defensive end. And I would argue the only very good player on that defense. Because if you look at the Bengals' woes defensively, and I'm sure you've heard all about it, they're one of the worst defenses in the league. When the Bengals lose a game, it's usually in spite of 30 points that they put on the board. Joey B has lost 4 games this season where the Bengals have scored 33 or more points. And they've lost 4 of those games, which is insane, and it shouldn't happen, but it's happening to the Bengals. And when you think, well, what about the Bengals in previous years? They weren't flashy. They were far from best defenses in the league, but they weren't these bad. So what went wrong? And I've talked to multiple Bengals experts and Bengals insiders, and they all seem to agree they just don't have the Jimmys and Joes. Lou Anarumo is never going to be the kind of defensive coordinator that elevates what he's got. He's just like a cover 1, cover 3 merchant. And I'm not trying to knock him because I don't think he's that terrible because he's had good productive defenses. And at a time, I thought he was guaranteed to land a head coaching gig just a couple of years ago. But Lou Anarumo isn't the kind of guy that will come up with the best game day plan to stop a top tier offense if he's coaching the kind of talent that he is coaching. Outside of Trey Hendrickson, I don't think there's anyone to worry about on that Bengals defense. And that goes even for players that were in the playoffs with the Bengals when they went on that Super Bowl run that just are not the same players in 2024. They had another player that could have been given the label of a very good football player. That is Logan Wilson. He's out for the year, but I'll get to that in a second. Trey Hendrickson is the one guy that can give you fits. I don't know if Tyler Guyton is going to play on this one or not, right? He's been questionable. He's been on the injury report and all that. But the Cowboys are going to have to find a way to deal with Trey Hendrickson because I think he against Tyler Guyton, he's likely going to beat the rookie. The Cowboys have to find a way to deal with that. And honestly, I trust Tyler Smith to handle whatever the Bengals throw to him inside. I trust Cooper Beebe, who just handled Dexter Lawrence a week ago. I know he ended up being banged up and exited the game and all that, but that was a very respectable effort from Cooper Beebe on Thanksgiving. On the other side, man, Brock Hoffman, Terrence Steele even, they should have been fine pass protecting for Cooper Rush. So I don't know if he can keep up with Joey B, but I do think the Cowboys move the ball efficiently on this one. Because I think this might be the worst defense in the entire NFL on the Bengals side of things, especially without Logan Wilson, who they just lost. I think Jake Ferguson being back for this one is going to be huge, right? Because you want Cooper Rush to get rid of the football quickly. That's why he's got the fastest time to throw in the entire league. I do think you don't want to go into this one overconfident that you're going to be able to handle the Bengals pass rush. You don't want to do that, right? You don't want to ask too much from Cooper Rush. Stick to what's been working, get rid of the football quickly, and keep this in mind. The Bengals, they're the 5th worst third down defense. I just talked about the Cowboys being the 6th best. The Bengals are the 5th worst third down defense. That means the Cowboys have a shot at continuing to move the chains. But not only that, the Chargers have a bottom 3 red zone defense. I'm not entirely sure if the Cowboys have one of the worst or one of the 3 worst red zone offenses, but they definitely have one of the worst, right? It's been a problem for the Cowboys all year long. I'll give you the exact stat in just a moment here. They are the 2nd worst. It's only the Giants, the Cowboys, and the Patriots. So it's going to be bad against bad in the red zone when the Cowboys offense is on the field. It should help having CD and Jake Ferguson and Rico Dowdle. I think those 3 guys, I don't think there's a group of 3 players on the Bengals that should be able to handle them. So Mike McCarthy just has to bring his best when the Cowboys are in scoring position because you're not going to be able to waste those shots because Joey B, he's going to do his thing. And spoiler alert, Joe Burrow is amazing in the red zone. The Bengals offense has been great because they have so many weapons and they've got a very, very badass quarterback under center. So that's going to be huge, I think. But let me see some of your comments here. Texas Martinez says Chase is getting shut down this game. You heard it here first. It's going to be fun, man, if Trevon Diggs plays and you get a Bland or Diggs against him every single play. It's absolutely going to be fun. And then you've got the Alabama LSU storyline for him and Jamar. It's going to be fun to watch for sure. Hopefully he gets shut down. If you shut down Jamar Chase, as Texas Martinez is predicting, then you're in a pretty good spot, aren't you? You're in a pretty good spot. So that would be fun to watch. But anyways, moving on here a little bit. Number 3 on my list, matchups that can sway this game the Cowboys' way. I think you got to go. I'm going to stick with the offense here for a second. And I'm going to go with CeeDee Lamb against the Bengals secondary. Should get you excited. Cam Taylor-Britt has his moments. He can be a physical cornerback at times. But he's far from being a guy that I would bet on when matched up against CeeDee. And I think one of the most consistent problems for the Bengals defense this year has been the fact that there is always one and sometimes two pass catchers that just go off against them. Talking about George Pickens going for 3 catches and 74 yards last week, while tight end Pat Freiermuth went 6 for 68. I'm talking about the game prior to that. Ladd McConkey for the Chargers, 6 catches for 123 yards. Before that, Tylan Wallace from the Ravens, 3 catches, 115 yards. You can add Mark Andrews with 6 catches for 68 yards on top of that. And Mark Andrews has been inconsistent. If you're into fantasy football, I'm sure you're aware. Jacoby Myers from the Raiders, 8 catches for 105. Before that, Devonta Smith, 6 for 85, while A.J. Brown had 6 for 84. It's just been a defense that is allowing big games out of pass catchers, and you get Jake Ferguson back on this one. You get CeeDee Lamb back on this one. And hell, I think Gregory here is onto something. Even Kevontae Turpin could be in line for a big game. And here's the thing. Here's the thing about Kevontae Turpin. You better be ready to tackle him. And the Bengals are bottom 10 in tackling grade by PFF. You got to be ready for the screens, but you also got to be ready just to deal with his speed in the open field. So that's going to be a fun matchup as well. Brett says, is Trevon Diggs and DeMarcus Lawrence coming back for this game? So officially, Trevon Diggs is questionable. We don't really know if he's going to go on Monday night. We already know that DeMarcus Lawrence is not making his debut or his return, on Monday versus the Bengals. So we might have to wait a little bit longer for that one. However, expect Trevon Diggs to be a game day decision. And I personally would speculate that he's going to play just based on the fact that he had a shot to play on Thanksgiving and then you had a 10-day week. It kind of makes sense for me for the Cowboys to go ahead and play Trevon. Plus, you absolutely kind of need the guy, right? Because look at your cornerback depth. No Kellen Carson anymore. No Andrew Booth Jr. You don't have Amani anymore. You don't have Josh Butler, who was a recent standout for the Cowboys. You don't have cornerbacks. You got to play Trevon Diggs, even if he's a little bit hurt, I guess. Anyways, man, Hasael Gomez is making his prediction. He's going with 37-24. Man, can you imagine a 37-point performance from the Cowboys against the Bengals? Like, that would be wild, just based on the fact that it's a Cooper Rush versus Joe Burrow duel. And if you imagine Joey B coming out on the losing end of a shootout, it would just be a hilarious thought for me. But anyways, that's my another matchup, Bengals versus wide receiver number 1 or the top target. You're always allowing these big games against top targets. Last but not least, and I think this is an obvious one, man, Rico Dowdle. A lot is being made about the Bengals going up against the poor Cowboys run defense. The Bengals are 26th in run defense DVOA, and that was with Logan Wilson on the field. And if you look at the numbers, if you look at the film, Wilson was consistently one of the best players on this bad unit. Now you remove him from that equation, and it's just a dangerous thought for Cincy. I had John Sheeran from ADZ Sports tell me, I think most collegiate football programs, like the powerhouses, I think they're more athletic than the Bengals are in every level. He didn't say better. He didn't say that they would beat the Bengals or anything like that. But he's saying powerhouse college football teams, they're more athletic at the defensive line, linebacker, and defensive backs than the Bengals are. Rico Dowdle might go off in this game, right? And we've seen his best in recent weeks. He's 11th in success rate in the NFL. Versus the Giants, he had 3 runs that went for 15 plus yards and 4 that went for 10 plus. So he's been having quite a good year. And he's been, he's just been trusted with more carries as well. You look at the season, and one of the biggest problems with Rico Dowdle was always that they were not handing the ball off to him a whole lot. Last couple of games, it's been 19 carries and 21 carries. So they're fitting him. They're feeding Rico Dowdle, and we talked about, removing some pressure from Cooper Rush. Those two go hand in hand. It feels like the Ezekiel Elliott committee thing is it's finally over. And I know a lot of people are saying that, hey, they were already kind of like making it more about Rico Dowdle. And sure, that is true to a point. But over the last couple of weeks, Rico Dowdle has been carrying the rock 8 out of 10 snaps for the Cowboys. 8 out of 10 times, right? As far as rushing attempts go, he has like an 84% rush rate for the Cowboys. So he has become the guy in Dallas, and I love that. And I think against the Bengals, you might be able to lean on that, especially if your thought going into this one is, I'm not going to handle a shootout versus Joey B. So how about I try to drag this one out? How about I try to feed Rico Dowdle 25 plus times today and just hope that I can win a close one against the Bengals, which has not worked out for Cincy because they've lost so many close games. So many of them. Let's see here. Bruce says only if Rico has a day and the defense clamps down. Now, speaking of the defense clamping down, and I know we've already covered my 4 matchups that could give this game to the Cowboys, but I'm just going to give you some more thoughts that I have. If there's one thing that Joe Burrow has had a weakness in, is in holding on to the damn ball. He's got 7 fumbles this year. Now, Cooper Rush has 7 of his own in much less games, but still, that's a dangerous number if you are Joey B and you're going up against Micah and these Cowboys pass rush, where the Marvin Overshown can rush as a free rusher at times. The same with Donovan Wilson, the same with Jordan Lewis, and then Goldston is winning, Lawson is winning. Cowboys players, when they're rushing Joey B, they better be aiming for that football because Joey B has had trouble hanging on to it. I think that's a big area where the Cowboys could exploit some takeaways, where they could try to take advantage of that. And I think they got to be ready for that opportunity. But I can guarantee that the Bengals are going to try to get rid of the football very quickly to avoid those kind of situations. But as long as it's a close game, you're going to get some drop back scenarios. And that's where the Cowboys should be able to thrive. Because I do agree, you're going to need some big defensive plays just to stay on this one. Or special teams, right? As somebody said earlier, I agree with that. Brett says, I don't think we should have picked up Zeke or Cook. I think most of Cowboys Nation is on the same page as you are, Brett. I don't blame you one single bit. And yeah, I mean, took them so long to treat Rico Dowdle the way that they've been treating him over the last couple of games. I don't think it's going to change anymore. Cam says, receivers just got to be ready. And, after that game from City last weekend or last Thursday, that's even more true because you saw CD drop 3 passes on that one, which was ugly. But yeah, receivers got to be ready. You don't get a lot of room for a mistake when you're facing one of the highest scoring offenses in the NFL, which is exactly what you're going to be facing on this one. Holy smokes, Justin Herbert is on the ground. He's injured right now. If you're not watching Sunday Night Football, Taylor Heinicke is warming up right now. And Herbert is grabbing his leg. Looked like he was grabbing his knee just a second ago. Don't listen to me regarding injuries because obviously I'm not an expert. But that is tough and that is important. Man. That's tough. That's tough for the Chargers, man. You hate to see that. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you think about this scoreboard. Do you think the Cowboys win tomorrow or not? Man, I want to know your thoughts on this. I want you to drop your prediction on this before I give you mine. Holly says Russian City need Velcro this year. Man, they do. Because Cooper Rush has also been hilarious with the fumbles at times. He's been, as Bosch Lombardi would say, he's been unserious, handing on to that ball. I think the Cowboys lose this one. I'm not going to lie. I think they have a shot to win it. And I think as we've already laid out, I think you need some takeaways to make that happen. I think you need like 5 sacks on Joe Burrow, which, hey, with Micah, it might happen. I'm not ruling out that possibility. But ultimately, I think the Bengals score that one more touchdown than the Cowboys do, and that is that, right? I think it's tough for me to ask Cooper Rush to outscore Joe Burrow when Joe Burrow has been scoring a lot, right? It's not like Joey B and the offense is struggling. The defense is. The Bengals, they've done their thing even against defenses like the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I expect them to find ways to beat the Cowboys and to put points on the board. I, however, think the Cowboys slow them down just enough for it to be a ball game late in the game. So I'm going to go with 26-20 on this one. 26-20 Bengals. And let's see your predictions. Let's see here. Bruce says that he's 60-40 on this one. So he's undecided a little bit. Gregory says 24-23 Cowboys. Mark goes 31-20 Bengals. Let's see what we got here. 24-21 Cowboys. Yin says, nope, they are winning by 3. So Yin is decided on the prediction. Holly says 38-24 Bengals. 31-21 Cowboys for Brett. Cam goes 26-30. Didn't tell us who's winning. Oh, he said Dallas. He said Dallas in a later comment. Oh, man, Texas is going wild with the prediction. He's a 70-yard field goal wins the game. We've been seeing a lot of long field goals this weekend, haven't we? And some of them were not appreciated by college football fans. But how about my Clemson Tigers sneaking into the playoffs with a 56-yard field goal and knocking out Alabama basically in the process? Bruce says, Mo, what is the highest score that Rush has ever gotten? I feel like getting to 21 is a struggle. I think that you are essentially right. Ironically, I'm going to say, isn't it the Bengals game a few years ago? Isn't that the answer to your question? Let me see here very quickly, man, because that's a good question. I'll try to find it right now for you. Meanwhile, you can take a guess in the comments. But my early prediction is going to be the Bengals game, basically. You know, when they faced the Bengals pretty much early in the year. What was that? Was that 2021? Let's see here. So 2021, you had a 41-21 win. No, wait, what? No, that's not. The thing is, I'm not getting his starts only. Oh, man, that sucks. I wish I could. Oh, I can filter those. Okay, I'm sorry. No, I can't. Oh, man. Oh, yeah, I can. All right. So if I go to his starts, you got a 27-point win. I mean, this was very obvious, actually. 34-point win versus the Commanders. Or 34, I mean, you scored 34 points on that one, the one that just happened. But then one of those scores was special teams and all that. But he did have 2 touchdowns on that one, so it would make sense that is it. 34 points against the Commanders, right? He had a 27-point win versus the Giants as well, which we know about. 22-10 versus the Rams, 25-10 versus the Commanders in 2022, 23-16 versus the Giants in 2022, and then a couple of games where they scored 20 points. So the Vikings and the Bengals game, and I also thought about the Vikings game, Mark, those were games where they scored 20 points. So I think if you're taking into consideration every single point, you could say Commanders, but that was a different game with the way that things shook out, with the defense stepping up, and then, you know, the Cavante Turpin epic kickoff return. So it's a tough one to call, but still had 2 touchdowns and all that. So I guess there's that. Ladies and gentlemen, that will be it for me tonight here on the show, though. Tomorrow, we get the game day show, and then we will see each other again on Tuesday night to talk some Cowboys football. As always, have a good weekend. Bye-bye.